Welcome back. Today is the first budget that will be presented by the Modi 2.0 government, and it is a big deal. Not only because we have a woman presenting the union budget, which is a matter of pride for me personally, but it's also going to be a tough budget to pull off. Now, let me explain how this works. The union budget is basically the accounts of the country, what the government plans to spend and what it's going to earn over the next 1 year. Now, the government earns money through taxes, and then it spends that money on roads and bridges, health, education, and defense. Now, the key here is to make sure that it doesn't overspend. So the money, it doesn't spend money it doesn't have, and that's called the fiscal deficit. Now, keeping that deficit under control keeps the credit rating of the country strong and healthy. Here's the challenge. India is facing an unprecedented job crisis. Our domestic demand is low. GDP growth for the first 3 months of the year was at 5.8%, far lower than what we were hoping for. We're also facing water scarcity. It's an emergency like never before, and it's all aggravating our already problematic farm crisis. Now, the government has very few choices on the table, but to spend heavily building infrastructure, which will indirectly create jobs, and to pour money into looking after our farmers and rural population by giving them minimum price for their crops and welfare. Now, this would also perhaps spur demand and jobs and kickstart the economy, but the question to ask is, where is the money going to come from? The tax revenues for the year have been down by 1.25 lakh crore rupees, lower than estimates. The government may plan to sell some stake in strong government-owned companies, but not all of them have managed to attract buyers. And the government is pouring money into companies like BSNL and Air India, which might be bad for us. There's a loan crisis looming in our banks and our non-banking sector, which might require a bailout of epic proportions from the government as well. So all of this will have to be factored into our spending over the next 1 year. Global factors are also not as generous as they were in the first term of this government, and a bad monsoon will make everything much worse. The government will need to spend generously and expect very little in return as taxes from ordinary citizens. This is not a job, really, that anyone would envy. It's going to be an extremely tightrope walk for the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. But she's made statements up till now saying she's receptive to advice from economic experts, and she's receptive to commentary from journalists across the country. And she's taking everyone's suggestions on board, which perhaps has given people some confidence. But the big challenge that lies ahead of her for today, and what we're going to be looking out for, is will she be making tough, unpopular decisions, or will the BJP, as they have done in the last 5 years, keep one eye on the upcoming elections as they make their plans for the year? In the studio with me, Vinay Tiwari, consulting editor with the Times Network. We have Sanchita Raju for the BJP. Vivek Kaul, senior journalist, joining us this morning as well. Vivek, good morning. Thank you for joining us. A lot of economists, Swaminathan, for example, who put his column in the Economic Times this morning, Nilesh Shah, a couple of other voices, all hoping that this government makes unpopular decisions this time.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Modi has won a second term. And, the first 100 days is actually the period where you can make some tough decisions and get away with it.
The honeymoon period.
The honeymoon period. And that's something that he lost out on last time around. In fact, when he talked about everything from, minimum government and the reform of labor laws, but nothing really happened. So this is, people don't normally get a second opportunity in life always. So this is that second opportunity.
And it's a brilliant second opportunity, right? From a political point of view, there are no allies who need sort of pleasing. You don't
yes,
have to
there are no
to
allies. The opposition is weak. BJP has governments in, most of the big states. Yeah, I mean, so there is a lot going for him. He has the political capital to pull it off, I mean, if I may say so.
And the political capital is going to be, I mean, if we've seen historically in our country, every time we've had to do something big on the economic side, it's important to have the political capital to do it.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's what we in fact said, right, the first thing in the morning, that today is the test where is the government playing a 5-year test match, or is it playing a ODI, which is just 1 year?
I was wondering how long you would go without a cricket analogy. 1 hour is pretty good.
So, I mean, I hope they play a test match and not just a 1-year battle, because that would mean that they have an eye on Maharashtra and Jharkhand and Haryana. That's going to be tragic, because you really can't solve the problem that we have currently by only looking at it from a 1-year point of view.
But if we look at how the first term of the BJP has performed, they've always had one eye on, and the truth is also that we are always in an election in some part of the country. There's always an election coming up in the next 6 odd months. And this is a party that focuses on winning elections, and Maharashtra is an important state.
Yeah, without doubt. I mean, that's the biggest fear I have, that if it's again going to be an election-oriented mindset, then there are a lot of tough decisions that you perhaps need to take right now will not get taken. And then you'll again do some jiggery pokery, some window dressing, some, robbing Peter to pay Paul kind of economics, and that's not going to help. Because clearly we have fundamental problems, and you can't address fundamental problems by simply looking at it from an electoral. But I think what has changed perhaps is that the kind of decisive mandate that they've got, I'm assuming, would have given him some shift and more confidence. Because remember, people voted for this government despite immense distress in some very core areas.
Vivek, I want to ask you this about the rural sector. Rural demand is low. Our farmers are in distress. There's a water crisis, which, the drought is making everything worse. Economists have always been perhaps not big fans of governments, handing out welfare. So this government has already said that the 6,000 rupees that they're giving to farmers every year will now be extended to include more farmers. Are you expecting more of that? And will that be unpopular among economists? Will that not be very good strategy?
I mean, it will definitely be unpopular among the economists, for sure. See, the basic problem is, every time a government hands out something, it's basically telling, it's basically telling the nation that we've failed on this front. Okay. Now, look at the minimum support policy, minimum support price policy that we've had for all these years. And, yesterday also prices were increased. But the problem is, the government buys only rice and wheat. So you can have minimum support prices for 20 odd crops. But as long as you're not buying them, it doesn't influence the price. The second thing is, the government is not in a position to buy 20 odd crops. I mean, that creates its own set of complication.
The government is not buying Bengan and Bindi and all of this, right?
The issue there is, unless you sort of free up the agriculture marketing part of it, wherein you let farmers decide as to who they want to sell to, let corporates in, let some, agriculture in this country is still being done as it was probably being done 500 years back. I mean, some pockets notwithstanding. So that attitude towards, that the farmer is weak and he's garib and, which is true to a large extent, but that has to change. I mean, you cannot keep, handing out stuff without really, looking into the fundamental changes.
If we consider the fact that in Maharashtra, they attempted, the Maharashtra government attempted to dismantle the cartel on the APMC. There was a huge lobby on the other side and they rolled it back. So there's a lot of talk about how we're going to do this and we're going to free up the farmers from the APMC, but it's not a popular thing to do.
No, it's not. And one, because it is controlled by politicians in most states. But I think just to add to Vivek's point, and he's the economist in the panel, he'll probably bear me out on this. I think our food procurement policy itself needs a complete overhaul and reform. I think we are still in the mindset of a food deficit economy. We are not. Year after year, we are a food surplus economy. I think we are procuring and storing more than you need. It's creating enough and more stress on FCI and other agencies which are doing the procurement. Also, we still follow the principle of a uniform procurement policy across the country. I mean, maybe Tamil Nadu doesn't need PDS in the same way that UP or Bihar does. And this food procurement, this over purchasing and stocking, half of it is getting pilfered, the other half is getting wasted, it's rotting.
Yes.
No exports are allowed.
It's
a bizarre
fact, it's, very bizarrely, it's creating environmental problems. I mean, look at a state like Punjab, okay?
Yes.
Punjab produces the most rice that is procured by FCI. Now, it produces rice because it is procured by FCI.
Yes.
There is no other reason for Punjab to be producing rice because Punjabis are not rice eaters.
Yes.
Okay? So what that does is that Punjab is a semi-arid region, and rice needs a lot of water. So there is over-pumping of water, and you end up with excess rice, and then they burn that stubble, and that all the smoke ends up in Delhi, and you have a problem. I mean, similar lines, if you look at Maharashtra, there is no reason that large parts of Maharashtra should be growing sugarcane.
Yes.
Sugarcane is
no business. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it should be grown in Bihar, it should be grown in West Bengal, where there is water. So, other than obviously, creating problems in obvious areas, it is also creating problems in areas which are not so obvious.
Yeah, and the whole green revolution that, we saw as a massive success in this country has now come back perhaps full circle to cost us environmentally. For example, and this a lot of the viewers from the south will understand, Kerala, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh in the coast of the south grow rice. They eat rice, they grow rice. We've never had a stubble burning problem in those places because it's harvested by hand and there is a process in place. Whereas the crop that is being grown in Haryana and in Punjab, in between wheat crops, they tend to use the machines to harvest so that they can finish faster and roll over
And then
another
they
wheat
need to
crop
burn.
as quickly as possible. That's what's causing the stubble burning. That's what's causing the problems in Delhi. So it's actually now such a complicated set of issues. And I personally am really hoping that the government, over not just this budget but the next term, prioritize water and air. Because if we consider where we are as a country right now on these two matters, it's a fairly scary prospect. Right?
Yes, and I think, look, I mean, to be fair to them, at least they've started talking about water. I mean, this Nal Se Jal project is a much needed project. I mean, I don't know where they'll find the money to do it. It's a very ambitious project, requires a very large investment.
Let's assume we have the money and we put in the taps. Where will you find the water to put in that tap?
Absolutely.
Is the big question at this
Oh,
point.
absolutely.
No, and see, what also is happening is, a lot of these issues tend to get trivialized. So it's like you'll get these WhatsApp forwards on how, you shouldn't waste water and, you shouldn't use the flush and stuff like that. I mean, which is all important. But more than that, if water policy in our country has to be linked to the agriculture policy.
Yes.
Because which is where most of the water is being used.
So coming back to what you said about sugarcane, for example, in the Vidarbha, the Yavatmal region of Maharashtra, where quite rightly, you have no business growing sugarcane.
And, and the funny thing is, and then they don't allow IPL matches, which probably use not even a fraction of the water that sugarcane does. I mean, it's not going
to... Technically, the farmers there should be growing jawar, which is the traditional crop. But the price difference of, one crop of sugarcane versus ragi or jawar or any of the smaller crops, why would the farmer make that choice? Why would I choose to grow something that will have a far lower financial yield than say, a sugarcane? Someone needs to incentivize and even that out.
Because your procurement policy is leading to the production behaviors, and that just doesn't add up in many ways. Look at how the difference between food grains and pulses, for instance. The pulses prices in year after year have been going through the roof very often because it's not just being produced enough. And food grains, on the other hand, is perhaps being overproduced.
Yes. In fact, Ayushman is right now in Uttar Pradesh with farmers at this point, talking to them about what they're expecting from this budget. Ayushman, good morning. What are the farmers telling you? What do they want from the budget, or what are they hoping for?
Good morning, Faye. A lot of expectations from this budget. Probably last time it was about PM Samman Nidhi, and the MSP was less talked about. This time the farmers expect the MSP to be increased. We have with us Mr. Yogen Yadav, who has been talking about the farmers issue all across the country, has been traveling. Sir, what is the expectations of the farmers this time from the union budget? How far can the farmers expect the rise in the MSP and the promise of the government has done?
This time during the elections, the farmers forgot their own benefits and losses and voted for national security. I guess this is time the nation now stood for farmers' security. To be absolutely honest, Faye, I do not want any new declaration from the government. All the farmers want is, please fulfill the promises you made in the last 5 years. Please provide money for all the grand declarations that have been made. Let me just list 5 things very quickly. Number 1, the government has said doubling of farmers' income. 3 years have passed. Would the government please now give the data for how much has been done so far, provide a roadmap for how it will be doubled in the remaining 3 years, and make adequate budgetary provisions for that. Number 2, MSP has been declared, it is inadequate, but can you please at least provide the farmers whatever MSP you have declared, so the farmers actually get the rate? That would mean at least 50,000 crore more rupees in the budget for procurement. Number 3, Kisan Samman Nidhi, which was announced last time. It's inadequate, but for the time being, can you please extend it to the tenant farmers, the poorest of farmers, the sharecroppers, the landless farmers? Number 4, PMFBY, the Fasal Bima Yojana. Farmers don't get the claims they make. This is, we fear, might be a drought year. In this drought year, can FBY, the farmer Fasal Bima Yojana, be made to work? Besides, there is the National Disaster Relief Compensation. Can that be increased from this measly sum of 13,000 per hectare to at least 25,000 per hectare. And fifth and final, the problem of stray animal is a menace all over the country. Can the government please provide the farmers with some subsidy, if not come up with a scheme to control this menace? These are 5 things, nothing new. The government just needs to implement what it has always said. That would be great.
सर, आप किसान हैं, आपकी इस बजट से क्या उम्मीद है?
देखिए, जैसा अभी योगेंद्र जी ने बताया कि एक तो इस बजट में गवर्नमेंट अपने झूठे आंकड़े पेश ना करे। हमने पिछले बजट में देखा, उससे पिछले में भी देखा, झूठे आंकड़े पेश करके एक सुनहरी तस्वीर दिखा दी जाती है जो कि वास्तव में सत्यता से बहुत दूर होती है। ऐसी चीज़ों का ढिंढोरा पीट दिया जाता है जो कि संभव ही नहीं है। गेहूँ, गन्ना और धान, अगर हम इस एरिया की फसल के लिए, जहाँ से मैं आता हूँ, गन्ना का वो एरिया है, गन्ने में पिछले 4 साल में 13.5% भाव की वृद्धि हुई है। अब ऐसे में अगले 3 साल में ये कैसे उसको दुगना करेंगे, ये हमारी समझ से परे है। धान में 24% की वृद्धि हुई है और गेहूं में 27% की वृद्धि हुई है। तो एक तो ये बात है कि ये या तो हमें, जैसा इन्होंने वादा किया था पहले कि जो हमारी समिति की रिपोर्ट थी, उससे C2 के हिसाब से हमारी लागत का 1.5 गुना हमें देंगे, वो हमें नहीं दे पा रहे हैं। या फिर ये वादा पूरा करें कि हमें MSP important.
So for MSP, the expectations from the government is that the government would be working on its promise where it said that it would increase the MSP for the farmers, at the same time PM Samman Nidhi and the Kisan Fasal Bima Yojana. That is something which is being talked about between the farmers. Back to you.
All right, Ayushman, many thanks for that update, and we'll come back again for more questions with Yogendra Yadav, who's joining us there in Noida. But Avni standing by right now. We take a quick look at the economic survey that was tabled yesterday. Now, here's the thing. The economic survey used to give us a lot of data that we could use to understand where the economy is right now and where it's headed. This one, though, not so much data, a lot more gyan. Avni, could you take us through the highlights of that economic survey, please?
Well, Faye, good morning to you and to all our panelists. Like you pointed out, the economic survey is essentially an official, or it's supposed to be an official report card of the state of the economy. But there was a lot more gyan, like you said, in this particular economic survey. And a lot of voices, in fact, a lot of experts did feel that the projection of the Indian economy in the economic survey has been a little more optimistic, given the current state that we are in. However, there were also those who felt that the targets that are set out by the economic survey can be met if everything is done right. Now, that if is the big question here that we've all been discussing. But the economic survey does point out that the GDP growth is estimated at 7% going forward. It said that the slowdown that we've seen was largely due to the poll uncertainty, and now we are going to see a pickup as far as the economy is concerned. Investment activity has started picking up, and it says that there are some green shoots that are being seen now. And in fact, the GDP has averaged about 7.5% for the last 5 years, and India continues to remain one of the fastest growing economies. So this is as far as the economic state of the country is concerned. But aside from this, the economic survey has also pointed out several things that need to be looked at, and you know, these are points that need to be looked at from a much deeper level rather than a band-aid solution. So talking whether it's infrastructure, where it says the focus needs to be on public-private partnerships to sort of restart the entire spending and the infrastructure, kick off the infrastructure cycle in the country, and agriculture also, the things that need to be done to address water crisis, the incentives that need to be given to farmers. So all of these are more deeper solutions that it has put out rather than just band-aid solutions as far as the economic survey is concerned. So the economic challenge today is what is going to be very crucial to watch out for as to how the finance minister deals with that, because remember, we are in an environment where we are seeing a slowing GDP growth, where there is a slowdown in industrial production, and most importantly, consumer sentiment has been hit extremely hard, and that has come out in the form of vehicle sales that have been falling, including two-wheelers. Now, that is something that hasn't been seen in a very, very long time, over a decade, that two-wheeler sales have slowed down. That is something that has happened for the first time. And of course, the real estate sector, as we know, has been completely battered over several years now. And real estate is really important in terms of the kind of employment that it generates. the reflection it is of the economy as well. So I just want to focus a little bit now on the real estate sector and get in a very important voice here of Keki Mistry, VC of Vice Chairman of HDFC. He's an extremely important voice in this sector, who's spoken to us earlier about his expectations from the budget and what really needs to be done to revive the entire housing sector, because that will be a big first step into revival of the entire economy. So I spoke to Keki Mistry earlier, in fact, and I asked him what his main focus areas for the budget are going to be this time around. Let's listen in.
Well, in my view, there will be three focus areas, or there should be three focus areas of the budget. The first should be on job creation. Job creation is very important for our economy. Job creation will lead to more income in the hands of people. Income will lead to more consumption, and consumption will lead to more manufacturers producing more to satisfy that consumption. So it will create a boost to economic growth. It will create a boost to GDP. So this is the first theme. The second theme should be on the rural economy and on financial inclusion. And the third theme of the budget, in my view, will be on things like compliance, how to get more people into the tax net, how to make sure that people are paying their taxes and stuff like that. So these will be three broad themes of the budget. Now, if you were to look at the first one, which is the most important one, which is job creation, to my mind, the sectors in the economy which create jobs like housing, the SMEs, the small and medium industry segment, the NBFC segment, manufacturing, these are the segments which should get some kind of a boost. Housing in particular. Housing is the second largest employment generator in an economy after agriculture, and housing creates a lot of jobs, be it construction workers, masons, carpenters, plumbers, engineers, and so on and so forth. Housing also supports a lot of core sectors in the economy, be it cement, be it steel, be it paint, be it power, be it many of the ancillary industries associated with housing. And therefore, it is important that the housing sector gets a boost in the budget.
Well, the other question, of course, is extremely important with respect to the rate cuts that we've seen by the Reserve Bank. Now, while we've seen 3 consecutive rate cuts, it hasn't really translated into cheaper loans by the same magnitude of the repo rate cut. So that is also another big reason as far as the slowdown in the housing sector is concerned.
Well, I think we must understand one thing, that when RBI cuts interest rates, the entire benefit of the lower interest rate regime does not come upon every lender. It only directly benefits the banks who borrow money from RBI. For the interest rate transmission to happen in the system, the entire interest rates in the system have to come down, which means the bond yields have to come down. It means the banks have to lower their deposit rates and so on and so forth. So that cannot happen straight away. It only happens over a period of time. Having said all this, my sense is that inflationary pressure in the economy is very low at the moment. Global growth has slowed down, and with slowdown in global growth, we are unlikely to see any imported inflation in India, and therefore, in my view, there will be scope for RBI to cut rates going forward, and slowly over a period of time, there will be transmission.
All right, and the other question, of course, was the other challenges that the housing sector is facing, whether we're talking about unsold inventory, which obviously is coming from a fact, from the place where buyers are not coming out and really buying. So the main challenges that the housing sector is facing, and also as far as what the budget can really do to improve buyer sentiment, to incentivize buyers to actually go out there and buy houses.
The first measure I would suggest is with regard to the tax benefit on the interest on housing loans. When you take a housing loan, the interest you pay on that housing loan is tax deductible to the extent of 200,000 rupees. Now, for a short period of time, a couple of years ago, the government had said that if you buy a house within a certain period of time, there would be an additional deduction of 50,000 rupees that will be available in respect of the interest you pay on that loan. That period is now over. So to my mind, this benefit of 2 lakhs has been there for a long time. There is definite need in the system now to enhance that limit fairly liberally. And in my view, that limit should be raised from 2 lakh rupees to either 3 lakh or 3 lakh 50 or even 4 lakhs rupees. with the condition that this additional benefit of whatever be that amount, 1 lakh, 1.5, 2 lakhs, would be available only if you're buying a house within, let's say, the next 24 months. So that will result in faster sales. It will clear up some of the inventory in the market. And if it clears up the inventory, developers will be incentivized to build more. The second change I would suggest from a fiscal standpoint is with regard to rented property. Property is bought not just by end users, it is also bought by people who intend to rent out that property. Now we know that rental yields in residential real estate are extremely low, typically 2.5%, 3.5%. So the rental yields are very low. Therefore, an investor, a person who's buying a property with the idea of renting it out, needs to be incentivized in some form or the other. Today, when you're renting out a property, the entire rent that you receive is subject to tax. And the deduction that you have in respect of that rental income is the interest that you pay on taking a loan for buying that property. Till a few years ago, the entire interest was tax deductible. But a couple of 2 or 3 years ago, they changed the government changed the tax laws in the budget and restricted the interest deduction, like in case of self-employed properties, to only 2 lakhs rupees. Now we have to distinguish between a self-employed property and a rented property where there is income being generated. So to my mind, that the limit of 2 lakhs rupees needs to be removed.
All right, well, that was, of course, K.K. Mistry listing out his wish list from the budget this time round. We'll, of course, have to wait and watch what the finance minister does decide, because industry experts believe that restarting the housing sector, kickstarting the demand for housing is going to be extremely crucial in terms of playing an important role in, getting out of this economic slowdown that we are currently in. Faiz, back to you.
Thanks, Avni. Of course, the housing sector extremely interesting. It's almost like a distant dream. There was a time when every young Indian wanted to buy their own house. They would take that home loan, they would buy a house. The real estate sector was booming. Every other day you would have your front page of your newspaper taken up by launches from the real estate sector. When was the last time we saw that happen? What happened to a sector that, remember, hires the most number of Indians in their, in their construction sites? So when those construction sites come to a standstill, what happens to those jobs? What happens to all of the other sectors that depend on real estate to run their businesses? We'll focus more on that on the other side. Quick break now, but big budget day. Stay with us.
Heavy duty, long lasting, highest selling draw runners. Hetic telescopic channels for your drawers. Load capacity 45 kg. Lifetime functional warranty. German quality, Indian price. Hetic fittings, German quality you can trust.
आऊं तो केमिकल फैक्ट्री में हिकिड़ो वर्कर आहियां। ही कच्छी लीपन जी वस्तु बनाइण मुंहिंजो शौक़ आहे। आहिनि जा वखाण करी मुंहिंजी कला खे घर जी भिति ते स्थान ॾिना अने मूंखे कलाकार बनाई वधा। आभार।
நான் ஆர்டரை டெலிவரி பண்ணும்போது உங்க முகத்துல புன்னகையும் உங்க ஆர்டர்ஸ்னால தான் இன்னைக்கு நான் என் வீட்ல earning member-ஆ இருக்கேன். நன்றிங்க.
I'm 57. It took me 14 long years to become a published author. And you, my readers, please keep reading. I'll keep writing. Thanks a lot.
आपकी वजह से ये सफर शुरू हुआ है। ऐसे करोड़ों लोगों की कोशिशों को मौका देने के लिए थैंक यू।
Welcome to the wood hub of Africa, NCOC SEZ. With investment from over 120 investors from 16 countries, spread over 500 hectares of land, with insured investor-friendly policies like single window clearance system, assured long-term supplier sustainable logs, 0% tax on income for the first 10 years of business, an ocean of timber tales, Gabon calling.
My new i3.
Nice. Amazing, yaar.
Evolved soul says i3 is fine. Why would I want to buy an i5 at the same price? Doesn't want to get more for his money.
Just give a missed call to get more for your money. Upgrade to a modern PC at Chroma and get lifetime service assurance, plus loyalty privileges.
In the near future, virtual reality will transport you live to the news or even a factory. Business plans will be shared via augmented reality. Legal cases will be fought in cyber courts. And you will be able to download your mind into a machine. Even a 100-year-old university may not prepare you for this future. Bennett University does.
Welcome back. It's a big budget day, and of course we're waiting for Nirmala Sitharaman, our Finance Minister, to read out that budget speech. In the studio with me, Vinay Tiwari, our consulting editor. We also have Sanjarita G. Raju, spokesperson for the BJP, and Vivek Kaur, senior journalist, to join us right now. Vivek, we were talking about real estate before we went into break, and it's not a sector that is currently as active as it used to be, but it is tied to the general health of the economy.
Oh, for sure.
And you know, while and this is unfortunately the dichotomy of being middle class in this country. While everybody wants real estate prices to come down, we must remember that for every Indian, a large portion of our net worth is in real estate, is in the homes that we own.
Yes.
So when the prices come down, it makes us all poorer on some level.
Yes. So, but then see, the thing is, you know, you also need to look at the fact that unless there is activity in that sector, you know, a lot of jobs will not get created. Now, what typically, you know, if you look at the history of economic development, the way it works is people in agriculture tend to move from agriculture to construction and real estate. And that's simply because there are a lot of low-skilled jobs in construction and real estate. Now, while the construction sector is looking sort of okay thanks to, you know, the push by the government, the real estate sector is down in the dumps, and the only way it will ever pick up is if prices come down. I mean, there's no two ways. There's no second way of looking at it.
But technically, if the prices have not gone up for the last 3 years, isn't that effectively?
No, but see, what also happens is, you know, you need to realize that savings have come down over the last decade. Incomes have also not, I mean, the way incomes went up between 2002 and 2011, those days are long gone. I mean, you know, we used to have double-digit increments every year. I mean, I'm talking about the middle class here. Now, I mean, increments in, you know, banks and you know, other places tend to be in, you know, if you're a good performer, the increment will be somewhere in the high single digits.
Yeah.
So the days are, you know, where the income also was sort of going up, are long gone. But the funny thing is, you know, if you look at the home loans given by banks, they have constantly been going at a good pace. So there is a dichotomy here. So what that also tells you is that people are, you know, while people may not be buying real estate from developers, they surely are buying, because what is happening here, and my guess here is, because there's not enough data to say so, you know, convincingly, is that, you know, when you're dealing with an individual who's bought a second or a third home and has seen prices not go up in the last 7-8 years, he is, you know, a little more amenable to a price cut than a developer is. And secondly, the more important point is that you're moving into a ready to live property, which is not the case when you buy an under construction thing directly from a developer. So essentially, the trust between an individual looking to buy real estate and the real estate buyer real estate seller has broken down because of all the shenanigans that have you know, happened in the last decade. That is also a big reason, and you know, the developers are basically responsible for it. So.
Well, let's also bring in Mr. Raju, who's with us. From the BJP, you know, it's always been an idea with the government to bring down real estate prices and the real estate industry, but this is an industry that drives the economy. What is, you know, the government's plan for that sector?
one of the biggest reforms that we brought in was the RERA Act that was brought in to ensure that the rights of the home buyers are protected, because we are all aware of many of the scams that took place, especially in allotment of land, and the fact that many builders were taking money and not handing over the homes to the people who are investing their hard-earned money, especially the middle class, many first-generation homeowners who had put in all their savings into this. So the RERA Act was a step in that direction to ensure that the legal framework is there, that nobody can be taken for a ride. Now this is, have I lost your connection?
No,
Am
we
I
can
still
hear you.
there?
Go ahead. We're listening.
Connection chala gaya. For a moment, I thought we lost my connection. No, so what I was saying is that the RERA Act was a step in that direction to ensure that those who have been, those who were taken for a ride did not get their under construction homes. While this doesn't cover homes which were already, agreements which were already entered into, in the future this ensures that no more of this crime that was happening in the real estate sector, because a lot of black money was also being poured into real estate. And when you talk about demonetization and ensuring that GST also happens, these are reforms which were introduced to also ensure that real estate prices come down. They were exorbitantly high. Most average salaried people could not even imagine of buying a home because the prices were A, too high, B, most of the transaction was in black, it was in cash, it was not via checks. So these were huge problems that we were facing in the real estate sector. We realized that, which is why this act was brought in. I would like to bring out one more point here, if you will allow me. When we're talking about, in the previous 1 hour or so when we've been speaking, you've been talking about how it's a tough balancing act because there are multiple interests that you have to look at. You have rural India, you have young India, you have urban India. There are multiple Indias in India, all of whom need to be taken along. But we're also celebrating 150 years of Gandhiji. And we just have to remember what he said. Whenever you bring in any law, any legislation, imagine the man or the woman who's at the very end of that line, who never gets a fair chance in life to make it to the finishing line. So that is a very, very important philosophy which we believe in, which is going to also help us ensure that we mainstream many of those who are left out of the conversation. And when we talk about subsidies and SOPs or the middle class wanting tax breaks, here I want to give you one concrete example which has happened in the last 5 years. And this is about the LPG subsidy. While all of us are entitled to the LPG subsidy, the Prime Minister went out and said, those who can afford it, I request you to give it up so that those who require this much more, they can avail of the subsidy. And middle class and middle India rose to this occasion and came forward and gave this up on their own. Sorry?
Yes. No, yes, I understand what you're saying, and yes, so on the point of real estate, and we're going to just try and get that line back, but on the point of real estate, the other very ambitious sort of project that the government has announced, and this is a government that likes to make ambitious sort of declarations, like just yesterday, Smriti Irani actually said that by 2022, we will remove malnourishment from this country completely. Now, 2022 is 2.5 years away. So that's an ambitious thing to say. The government started
That's not
off,
even an ambitious thing to say. I mean, it's just a thing to say.
It's just a thing to say. This government started off with the idea of housing for all by 2022. Let's assume we have the money to do it. Right? Let's set that, but let's put a pin in that and say, look, we have the money to do it. Who's going to build that? Is it the real estate sector that's currently in the situation that it is? Is it the government? Is it organizations like MADA and the DDA that don't have the expertise to build? Are we building rural? Are we building? So, and every time we ask questions, they reiterate their idea of we're going to build pakka houses for everybody. The Prime Minister keeps talking about it himself. Again, only 2 years to go. So, what would that sort of public policy do for the real estate sector?
So see, that's the thing, I mean, it's a question of capacity. It's like, when you talk about good education, you need good teachers.
Yes.
Then the question is, who will teach those teachers?
Yes.
Right? Which is where, the question of capacity comes up. So, I mean, there's no harm in having all these big ambitious goals. But ultimately, you also need to take into account the fact that how are you going to sort of get the resources to implement it? Which, resources is where, our country really is not there. So, Yeah, I mean, so these are big things that we tend to talk about, but ultimately, whether we have the capability to implement it is something that we need to ask.
In fact, latest information that's just coming in, we understand that Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman called on former Finance Minister Arun Jaitley yesterday and had a discussion with him. This would have been a courtesy call, given that we know that the Finance Ministry would have had the budget sort of printed and ready a while ago. So she did have a meeting, and that's interesting. Sources also indicate that the government is likely to focus on banks consolidation, infrastructure spending, and job creation.
Well, why do sources have to say that?
We know that these are going to have to be priorities anyway, Vinay.
Yeah, I mean, yes, they're obviously the priorities. I don't think there's any secret on that.
I'm curious. Okay, if we just take a look at it a little closer, banks consolidation, infrastructure spending, and job creation. I'm glad to actually see, a mention of job creation. Again, there is a difference between what, say, party spokespeople are saying to us and the actual activity that's taking place, within government, because we know the Prime Minister has put up a committee to specifically look at unemployment or job creation.
Yes, but I think these 3 points that have come from sources pretty much sum up the entire budget exercise in 3 sentences, because this is exactly what is actually needed to be done. That whole document should essentially deliver these 3 things.
Yes. Well, personally for me, I hope that the infrastructure spending that's happening is going to happen in the area of water. And, that should be, that's the infrastructure that's actually necessary at this point.
Yeah, but see,
the farm and a water...
The water policy is not, it's not about spending money. It's about doing the right things. I mean, so I'll give you an example. So let's look at rice being grown in Punjab, right? We talked about it. Now, one part of it is rice is grown in Punjab is because FCI has traditionally bought, a lot of rice and wheat from Punjab. So there is an infrastructure in place. Now, what also happens is that power is free in Punjab, right? So
in fact, while you continue that, I just want to point out on your screen, Anurag Thakur, MOS Finance, performed a puja this morning, and he's on his way to Parliament. But we also want to bring in Yogendra Yadav into what, who's joining us right now, into what you're saying about the fact that the farm crisis and the water crisis are fundamentally linked, and the solution will also need to be linked. Please,
so it's not so. I mean, so it's not as much about spending money as it is about doing the right things and having the basically and doing it over and over again, so that we are able to finally solve these problems over a period of time.
Yes, if we have Yogendra Yadav, I just want to bring him in on the point of water and the farm crisis. Mr. Yadav, good morning again. We know that the government has set up a Jal Shakti ministry. We know that the ministry is working on a plan for the water issue. Again, like Vivek said, maybe it's about incentivizing or disincentivizing certain crops in certain places, being more judicious about our use of water. And, when we incentivize crops that don't use as much water, how do you expect the government to do that? Is that something that could be within the purview of today's budget?
I don't know, Faye, if that would be part of the budget, but this emphasis on water conservation and the water crisis that faces the country, I think that's a welcome change in the government policy. The problem, as everyone knows, is that 70% of our water comes from underground, from bore wells and so on. And over the years, over the decades, we have indiscriminately allowed, in fact encouraged, in fact subsidized these bore wells by government money, which has led to this huge crisis. More than 250 districts of this country are now in dark zone. The water level tables have fallen. So we have a crisis. What can we do about it? 2 or 3 things, but I'm afraid it will cost some money. One, correctly, everyone recognizes that paddy and sugarcane are water guzzling crops. They are being grown where they don't naturally belong. Now, in order to get the farmers to shift from that, remember, farmers don't love sugarcane. Farmers don't love paddy. In Punjab, where they grow it, they don't even eat it. So, I mean, the only reason they do it is because they get decent returns. And because they don't get decent returns on anything else. So, the way to do it would be, if you can ensure that Punjab farmers, Haryana farmers get decent returns on what they used to grow, namely chana, namely makka, bajra. These are things they used to grow. If farmers can get decent returns on these things, why would they not grow it? Of course they would. That would require subsidy. That would require ensuring that farmers actually get the MSP, which they don't get. MSPs are announced on paper, and we keep debating whether the MSP is high enough, should it go higher. But the most important thing is that no one gets it. Paddy and wheat are the only crops where MSP is ensured. Sugarcane is the only crop where, because of FRP, they happen to get some returns on that. So that cost structure, that thing has to be changed. That's very important. And second, massive money needs to be pumped into micro irrigation. This entire obsession with huge macro Sardar Sarovar kind of dams has to shift. We have to go towards micro irrigation. A large number of projects are nearly complete, not fully complete. They need it to be completed. Money needs to be allocated. That's the way forward.
To be allocated. So Vinay, this would, I mean, whatever we expect the Jal Shakti ministry to do, it's going to need money.
Yes, it will. And not just money, I think it also needs political will, because remember, the problem of water is a mess in urban India, it's a mess in rural India, it's a mess all over. And also, I think in the last 15-20 years or so from Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee's time, we've been hearing of different ambitious schemes, from interlinking of rivers to water harvesting being made mandatory in the urban centers and so on and so forth. But frankly, I don't think there has been a continuity of policy in terms of water conservation or even water supply management in some ways. I think Mr. Yadav made a very important point about micro irrigation. If you see what happened in Maharashtra, for instance, the one irrigation scheme that came up, say about 10 years ago, ended up in a royal corruption mess. And that's where the big problem is, that we've had these bits and pieces schemes coming up, but it's all gone down the corruption drain. Nothing has happened seriously. It also requires the involvement of the state governments as much as the central government. And this is not something that can get done only if the central government pushes it. It requires state governments.
Irrigation and agriculture.
And I'm sorry to say this, but even though while we discuss the national budget, we tend to not look at the mess that the state government budgets are currently across India. There is hardly a state that has a good, decent budgetary record, and that is creating an enormous pressure on the system, especially in places like agriculture and other areas.
Well, Vivek, obviously when, like Mr. Yadav was saying that, you will perhaps need to incentivize chana, you'll need to incentivize the crop that used to be grown in most of our states. This is going to be not just unpopular, but perhaps a difficult thing to do, because let's be honest, in most of the states, the sugarcane lobby or the sugar mill lobbies are political lobbies.
Yeah, I mean, so it's like in Punjab. I mean, let's say for a moment you try to get the farmer. I mean, let's say you try to price electricity.
Yes.
So there will be a problem. I mean, it's but natural, because once people sort of become used to something over a period of time,
very difficult to
it's very difficult to wean them away from it.
So. Mr. Yadav, do you believe that these would obviously be unpopular decisions to make, but do you think this is the government to make that decision? Mr. Nirmala Sitharaman, they're just arriving, I believe, at
even if it's a continuity of the old government. It is a new government. It's time for fresh start. It's time for government to do things which normally it finds difficult to. One of the things I would mention is, isn't it the time for the government to at least put out some facts in the public domain? For more than 2 years, we've been waiting for data on farmers' suicide. Before election, the government didn't want to disclose. They used all kind of subterfuge. Can we get it now? For the last 3 years, we've been waiting for the government to tell us how much income of the farmer has been increased. Remember, it was to be a 6-year mission. Remember, 3 years are over. And the least we need to know is, all right, so how much has it increased? The government didn't want to do so before election because obviously the data was embarrassing. Now it can. So these are starts that can be made. In terms of unpopular decision, I fear that sometimes we look at only one side of it. Yes, free electricity in principle is not a great policy. But on the one hand, you impoverish the farmers. On the other hand, you offer them these incentives, which are actually not very decent, sustainable incentives. When you are in a situation of this kind, you cannot just withdraw one. You have to attend to both the things. You need to balance both sides of the picture. So if we want to withdraw electricity, free electricity, which in the long run is not a bad idea, electricity should be priced, but then make sure that farmers get the price for their crops. You can't do one thing and not do the other.
Absolutely. So, a very quick question before we move, to our next topic on railways. The farm sector, like Yogendraji was saying, is distressed. There's no doubt about it. Will it be able to handle these unpopular decisions?
Yeah, so that's the tricky part. I mean, see, which is why Yogendraji is right. I mean, you cannot take away one set of, subsidies without doing anything about the problems. I mean, like for the simple fact that it is very difficult for a farmer to sell what he produces on his own. He is dependent on the, APMC to do that. So how do you, like we discuss.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, go. Sorry.
No,
go
so
ahead.
like we were discussing the last time, Devendra Fadnavis tried to dismantle APMCs in Maharashtra. He was not able to do so. So, but then there are ways of sort of getting around it as well. Like in Mumbai, what happens is that there are farmer markets, and there are lots of farmer markets all across the city where farmers from places which are 5 to 6 hours away from Mumbai come once a week and sort of sell what they've produced. And I mean, so there is one market near where I live, and I talk to these guys regularly, and they're very happy about the fact that they are able to sell what they produce at a price that they want to. So, unless you let farmers do that, or, build institutions which let farmers do that, I mean, we're not going to go anywhere, get anywhere. So.
In fact, we have Alok Singh right now, who's at the New Delhi railway station. Of course, long-distance trains and the railway budget, which is now part of the main budget, is also a big consideration at this point. Alok, standing by with some commuters or passengers for the Indian Railways. Alok, what do passengers want? Let's remember that safety has been a challenge for the Indian Railways over the last couple of years.
Yes, Faye, very good morning to you, but not very good morning for the passengers who are waiting for the train, especially who are traveling in the long distances trains. And here we have with us some of the passengers who are waiting for the train. आप कौन सी ट्रेन से इंतजार कर रहे हैं?
मालवा एक्सप्रेस।
कहाँ से कहाँ चलती है मालवा?
ये इंदौर से जम्मू तक।
तो अभी कितनी देर लेट है?
4 घंटे तो हो गए हैं। आउटर में खड़ी हुई है बहुत देर से
खड़ी हुई है। So this is one of the concern, this is one of the prime concern if you say that. And आप लोग दूर से सफर करते हैं, हमेशा ट्रेनें लेट होती है या आज ही ऐसे हुआ?
80% टाइम तो होती है।
80% लेट है। So that budget is coming today, that railway budget. What are your expectation from the railway, basically railway department? क्या बोलना चाहिए?
कि फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल टाइम आपकी ट्रेन सारी टाइम्स पे है, उसके अलावा क्लीनलीनेस वगैरह में आपको थोड़ा बजट दे, साफ सफाई में होना चाहिए बजट थोड़ा।
साफ सफाई में होना चाहिए। आप बताएं, आप लोग भी ट्रेवल करते होंगे, कितना ट्रेनों में क्या चाहेंगे, सरकार से क्या चाहेंगे?
जी लेट नहीं होना चाहिए। लेट नहीं होना चाहिए।
ट्रेन लेट नहीं होनी चाहिए।
जी 4 घंटे 4 बजे बैठे हुए हैं हम।
अच्छा, आपको भी जम्मू ही ट्रेवल करना है?
जी फतेहपुर जाना है, 4 बजे बैठे, गाड़ी नहीं है।
अच्छा, आपको फतेहपुर जाना है। सो Faith, this is another passenger who is going to Fatehpur. This is another direction of the India, but he is saying that his train is also late for 4 hours. तो आप सरकार से क्या चाहोगे?
गाड़ी नहीं लेट होना चाहिए ऐसे में।
ओके, so गाड़ी नहीं लेट होनी चाहिए। So these are the voices from here at the railway station. We'll talk to some more passenger. मैम, आप लोग कहाँ से कहाँ जाने वाली हैं आप लोग?
हम 40 गाँव जा रहे हैं।
कहाँ जा रही हैं?
40 गाँव।
40 गाँव। आपकी ट्रेन लेट है?
हाँ, नहीं, राइट टाइम
है। तो अभी आप कब से बैठे हो स्टेशन पे?
हम हरिद्वार से कल आए यहाँ, अक्षरधाम में रुके।
आप मैम, रेलवे बजट है आज, रेलवे डिपार्टमेंट से क्या चाहोगे? आप रेलवे पे ट्रेवल करते होगे, सरकार से क्या चाहोगे?
बस आनंद ही आनंद है, सरकार का बहुत अच्छा है। हाँ, थोड़ी सफाई ज़्यादा कर देता है उसको।
थोड़ी सफाई ज़्यादा।
हाँ, ट्रेनों में जरा सफाई अच्छी करो।
सर, आप क्या कहना चाहेंगे? ट्रेन आज रेलवे बजट भी है, आपको क्या लगता है कि ट्रेनों में क्या क्या चीज़ की ज़रूरत होनी चाहिए? किराया बढ़ता है, क्या कहेंगे?
किराया बढ़ता है तो वादा नहीं है, सुविधा बढ़ने को ना।
सुविधा बढ़ने को किस तरह की सुविधा आप चाहेंगे?
थोड़ी अभी कभी कोई गाड़ी में, सब गाड़ी में नहीं है, कोई गाड़ी में सफाई थोड़ी कम होती है। कल हम हरिद्वार से आए, कौन सी एक्सप्रेस, मसूरी एक्सप्रेस, बिल्कुल सफाई नहीं थी।
बिल्कुल सफाई नहीं थी, तो गंदगी। So, Faye, that government always talks about the cleanliness on the train, but here the passenger is also complaining about the cleanliness, that they are saying that the train remains dirty. In fact, in one of our reports, we saw that there was the window of the long distance train that was broken, and despite that, the train was on the operational. So this is the condition of the railway here in the national capital. People have a lot of expectation, and in fact, they are expecting that pocket-friendly budget from the railway department, from the finance minister. Let's see how and what will come. Back to you.
Question to the people around you. You said pocket friendly. So on one hand, there's the fear that the rates of tickets might increase, that the fare rates might increase. On the other hand, there is the need perhaps for better service. Do the people around you feel that they would be happier if the budget or if the allotted money to improve the service of the railways rather than to reduce the prices of tickets?
Well, exactly. This is the thing that people are expecting from the department, from the railway department. They want that it should be it should be pocket-friendly budget, and they want the government should also start, because the main issue here is Faye, about the train punctuality. In fact, today, that as we talk to the people who are here, there are several people, there are several trains. In fact, when we entering inside the railway station, we saw there are 4-5 trains, and we saw the chart of the trains. It was showing that there are 4-5 trains that were late around 4 to 5 hours. So this is not the first time. This is daily routine affairs. And in fact, in several places, we saw these kind of, in several railway stations of India, these kind of problem. And it is very serious issue, because everybody is depending on the railway somewhere or the other. Every family member is traveling on the railway, is traveling in the train, and they want the punctuality, they want the schedule, the train on schedule. So this is the basic problem of the railway passengers, and the government need to think about that.
It's always fascinating to talk to passengers at a train station. We understand that Ms. Sitharaman has also arrived at the Finance Ministry at this point. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back on the other side. Big day here on Mirror Now as we continue to bring you the budget coverage. Don't go away.